So if you could build from scratch, what would it look like? Let's take a quick look at what we've built. We have 3 strategic disciplines that are integrated. We've got planners, just like you saw in the previous model, except our planners aren't just looking at insights that can be leveraged to craft a piece of communications. They're looking much more broadly about consumers and how to engage with them. So it's not just about an idea that can be leveraged against a piece of narrative. It could be an idea that could drive the creation of a new application for a consumer. We've reintegrated media back in. We heard that nice debate earlier. We do believe that media planning has to be integrated inside of agencies. It's quite conceivable that in the future, the buying of media will move to computers. It'll be more of an auction model. But the planning of media, we believe, firmly has to be back inside of agencies. And the main reason for that is because we think it's just as important to be looking at unpaid media as also at paid media. And in fact, a lot of the more interesting work that's happening in the digital space is really in the area of unpaid media. It's not about sponsoring things where you get 0.3% click-through rates. It's about creating things that you might even own. It might even be your own brand's media that you've created that have all the same behaviors of other forms of media. And then, of course, all of our clients are very much concerned about accountability. And so analytics has to be integrated into this model. And of course, when we're working in the digital space, we can be more accountable. We are more measurable. And so, of course, it makes sense to have analytics integrated as another part of your team. We have 3 creative disciplines that we've integrated. We have copywriters and we have visual designers, just like we saw in the previous agency model. But to that, we've added a 3rd creative discipline that we call interaction design. And in some agencies, they call this information architecture or user experience design. But it's the idea of a creative discipline that looks very broadly at how consumers engage with things and doesn't think just about the linear sort of communication one way outward. It also looks at all of the different forms of inbound engagement that we might create with consumers. And then probably the biggest difference between a digital agency or an agency for the digital age and the old model, of course, is the inclusion of technology. And I think that this is the real dividing line between the two. At RGA, we've got about 150 technologists that work with about 300 creatives. So it's about half the size of our overall creative department. And if you don't have technology integrated as a discipline inside of your team structure, and you're either outsourcing it or you're not even thinking about it, then you can't be an agency for the digital age. You'll never know how to engage a consumer with technology unless technology is core to what you actually offer. So these are the 7 disciplines that make up RGA. And they're managed. The teams of these 7 are managed by account managers, just like we saw in the old model. But very importantly, they're partnered with producers. And the reason for that is because agency for the digital age, we produce probably about 95% of what we conceive of for a client. We don't have the outsourced model that existed in the past. And it's not because we're just trying to make an extra buck off the client. There's a very good reason. A lot of the stuff that we come up with, if we didn't build it, it would never get built. And the same thing is true with some of the content that we create. And so we've added one last piece to our model, which we call Digital Studio. And this is the division of RGA that is responsible for creating linear video and audio. And so this is what an agency for the digital age looks like. It's one model. There will be many of them. But as you can see, it's a much broader team structure than the old agency model, which really consisted of 4 different disciplines. We've integrated together about 9 disciplines on top of a digital studio that can execute a lot of our production ideas.